Hey, welcome to another episode of Lessons on Learning. These are quick fire videos, maybe somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes, just talking about how we learn, how our learners learn, and how we can use that information to develop really effective and impactful teaching sessions when we're working with our learners too. So thanks for joining us. And as ever, if you're enjoying this, please make sure that you recommend to some friends. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as well, or drop me any comments. So today I wanted to talk about rabbit holes. Rabbit holes? Yeah, rabbit holes. How do we avoid this problem of going down rabbit holes? Let me explain. Have you ever had a situation where you've been delivering some information either to a colleague or to a workmate or to an assistant or maybe even to a classroom full of learners, and as you've been talking about something, it's sparked an idea in your head that's thought, you know what, oh, hang on, let me just tell you about this. But hang on, sometimes you need to do this, and you start making little divergences and little diversions and going around different places. Or maybe somebody asks you a question, you think, okay, let me answer that question, and then suddenly you start going off on little tangents, and before you know it, you're going down these rabbit holes, exploring things that you never intended to do. Meanwhile, tick tock, the clock is ticking away, and you find yourself talking about all kinds of things that you haven't planned. And time is running short and you're going off track a little bit. Has that ever happened to you? Maybe it's just me. I try not to let it happen these days because I use a couple of the methods that I want to share with you today. So look, if that does happen to you, let's talk about how we can avoid it and what we can do to get around it. First and foremost, the best way of avoiding it is to just come up with something, that we call a learning objective. I'm just going to put an LO here, learning objective. And a learning objective is really your destination. Where do you want your learning to end up? Where do you want your learners to be at the end of this session? If you've got a destination, it can really help you to figure out when you're going off track, and more importantly, how to get back on track. Now, when it comes to a learning objective, it's not just about, I want them to know this, that, and the other. It's also about what do you want them to be able to demonstrate, exhibit, or to show. It's okay saying I want them to know this, but how will you know? More importantly, how will they know that they know it? So a learning objective has to be something measurable, observable, demonstratable, something like that. I want you to think about it like this. I want you to think about the skill or the information that you're delivering plus an action equals your learning objective. So, for instance, my learning objective is that I want them to know. I want them to know all of the different types of color in this particular range, or I want them to know all the different types of products in this particular range. I also want them to list the products out. Does that make sense? That makes a learning objective. I want them to know how to do a particular technique. I want them to be able to demonstrate that technique. So there's your learning objective. Is that making sense? So a learning objective is not just what you want them to know, it's what you want them to be able to demonstrate, exhibit, show, measure in some way. Now, once you have that in place, it's really easy then to keep yourself on track, because it's just a case of thinking to yourself, right, if I share this information, this story, is this story something that they need to know in order to get to my learning objective, or is it just something that's nice to know that kind of adds to it? Now, if it's need to know, I have to give it to them in order to get to the learning objective. If it's nice to know, well, maybe I don't have time, or maybe it's something that I can follow up with later. So think to yourself, before I answer this question, before I go down this rabbit hole, is this going to help get me closer to the learning objective? If so, I can carry on, or if not, then I need to somehow defer it. Now, I'm not saying don't deal with it. What I'm saying is defer it. So I'll talk about that in a little while. It could very well be that the information that you're getting from your learners and what it is that your learners are telling you, maybe the questions that they're asking you, the information that they're wanting to get from you, could very well be that you need to actually change this learning objective, that it needs to be something different. So for instance, the learning objective might have all been about products, or it might have been about I don't know, face creams or hair care or nail colors. It could have been anything at all. It could have been about a particular product, or maybe the task that you're wanting to teach is all about, I don't know, baking cakes, for instance. That's your learning objective. But it could very well be that the information that you're getting, the questions, the feedback, the discussions, are telling you that your learners don't want to know about baking cakes. What they actually want to know about is baking brownies or icing cakes or different ways of mixing up various batters, for instance. So if that's the case and that's where the room wants to go, then that's okay, because what you can do is you can switch out this learning objective and create a brand new one and say, okay, time out. We were going to talk about this, but now I think it's going to be better if we talk about this instead. So you can turn your learning objective. It still involves what skill or information will you be sharing, what action do you need them to demonstrate or to show in order to know that they've reached their learning objective. So if you do feel yourself going down a rabbit hole and it's completely unavoidable, one method is to simply change your learning objective. But if you do that, you have to time out, you have to get all the group together, you have to have a conversation and make sure that everybody's in agreement. And it goes something like this. Look, if we continue down this track, we're going to end up in a whole different place. We're going to end up talking about brownies instead of talking about Victoria Sponge. Now, if you really want to know about Victoria Sponge, we need to stop this conversation and carry on down this road. But if you're happy to forget Victoria Sponge and talk about brownies, then we can go down this road instead. But you need to get that agreement from everybody before you switch your learning objective. It could very well be if there's a mismatch in the class and half the group want this and half the group want that. My advice is to stick with what was originally agended. So for instance, if your class is about Victoria Sponges, but half the class change their mind midpoint and want to talk about brownies, then you really need to stick with the Victoria Sponge, because that's what was on the information, that's the ticket, and that's what people signed up for. And what you can say to everybody else, to the other half that want the brownies, is you can say, look, if you want to go down this particular path, which is going to take you to a different destination, we can either A, arrange another class. If we've got time, we can stay back at the end of the class if you're happy and willing to do that and share some information, or I can send you to these resources, or I can arrange something different. So it's all about communication. Does that make sense? But the point still remains, before you get into a conversation, before you get into questions and answers, discussions, stories, debates, think to yourself, is this leading me closer to or farther away from my original destination? That's how you can start to avoid the rabbit holes. Now, when this information comes up, I'm not saying that you should dismiss it and say, sorry, we're not talking about that. What I'm saying is you should defer it. And one way to defer it, well, we've talked about a couple of ways there. You can have a little sort of get-together meeting and say, do we need another class? Do we need to change tack? Can I give you some resources that will help you with the information that you're wanting to get? The other way is you could just simply set up just like a notepad, or I use flip charts. I use a flip chart thing here, which is a big flip chart. And on that flip chart, I have little post-it notes here stuck onto the flip chart, and I give the learners post-it notes as well. And on that post-it note, you can say to them, okay, that's a great question. This is a great conversation, but it is taking us down a different path. We are going down a rabbit hole. So what I want you to do is I want you to put that question, that comment, that remark onto a post-it note, put it onto that flip chart, and we will talk about it if we get the time. And if not, I will send you some resources, or better still, show you where you can get some resources that will help you with that question or that comment. So what you're doing is you're not dismissing it, you're deferring it. You're not saying that it doesn't matter, you're saying it does matter, but for now what we're going to do is we're just going to park it until a little bit later, and we'll deal with it at some point. Remember, at the end of the day, you did sell a particular, a particular class. That particular class did have an objective, Victoria's sponges, makeup, brownies, whatever it was. It did have that objective, and there will be people in there who do definitely want to go there. So it's okay to stick to that if you want. All we're doing is we're looking at ways in which we can avoid going down those rabbit holes without necessarily deflecting or dismissing any other information. Okay, it's all good. So let's summarize. The best, if you feel yourself going down rabbit holes and you think that's happening to you quite a lot, the very best thing to do is to establish a learning objective right at the beginning. Remember, a learning objective is not just the information and the skill, it's also about an observable, measurable action as well. You will be able to do this like that in this amount of time. Share that objective with everybody so that everybody gets agreement. Is this where we're going? Everybody cool with the destination? Great. Let's go. If you start to get questions, comments, or stories or ideas pop into your head, remember, they don't need to know everything that you need to know. They only need to know the stuff that's going to help them get to the agreed objective. So if stuff does start to come up, think to yourself, is this going to take me closer or move me further away? If it's going to move you further away, forget it. Leave it for another time and stick to the stuff that's going to get you where you want to be. If you're getting questions, comments, feedback that the group needs to go someplace else, then you can do two things. You can have a little come together meeting and you can agree on a new destination. If that's what everybody wants, then by all means go there. If only half the class want it, or some people want to stick to the original agenda, in my opinion, you're honor bound to stick to the agenda, to stick to the subject that's written on the top of the poster, and then just help everybody else do another class, some more resources. Maybe if you've got time and you're willing, you can talk to them outside of class hours. If you're getting a lot of questions that are taking you off topic, don't deflect them, don't dismiss them, just try to defer them. Okay, everybody, write that down, put it over there, park it on the flip chart. If we get time, we will get to it during the class. If not, I will show you where you can find resources to help. Okay, and that way you're keeping everybody on board, but you're not going down the rabbit holes. You're sticking to the content and the agenda that you had planned, and you're delivering it in the time that you promised. That's really what matters. Look, I hope that helps, my friends. As ever, if it was helpful, make sure you drop a comment below. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button as well. Share this channel with some friends. If there's anything that you'd like me to do a video on, let me know and I'll post a video about that particular thing. All right, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again on the next one. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.